Hi, everyone.
Hi.
We get a lot of questions regarding how to teach kids language skills. I mean, that's a loaded question because that is our unending question. That's what we do, is teach language skills from the very beginning to the very advanced learner. But starting off, when you've got a beginner learner who is already talking in maybe 1-2 word phrases, how do we increase those language skills to get that student to speak in 2 or 3 or 4 word phrases? The very first thing I would say is look at motivation. So if a student is trying to request for something, so for instance, if a student is trying to request for water, the student may say wa. You would always add one thing to it. So if the student is saying wa, you could say water and give the student water. If the student is already requesting water, you could say drink water. Now, at this point in time, there doesn't need to be any type of responding by the student. It would just be us modeling that drink water and giving the student the water. Once the student is starting to imitate our model, that's when we would actually request or ask them to make sure that they're repeating and saying drink water. So again, wa, student says wa, we say water, the student says water, we say drink water. The student now starts to request drink water. You may want to say drink water from cup, etc., etc. So that would be one way. That's from a manding standpoint. From a teaching standpoint, so from a receptive expressive standpoint, typically we start with verb cards, right? Well, first of all, we start with noun cards and teaching nouns, but after that we start, or at the same time, we're starting to teach verbs, for instance. So, looking at this picture, you've got a girl reading a book. We might say, what's she doing? And the first response we'd ask for would be reading. And then after the student can give 1-word phrases, we may expand on that saying reading book. Now there's a whole bunch of other things that go in with 2-word phrases. So, we talked about the manding. In terms of reading book, we may have another picture that is reading a magazine or reading reading a notebook, reading something else. Eat apple, eat cookie, eat ice cream. So that it's not just, reading isn't just tied to one noun. Then after a student is able to do that, then we might get a 3-word phrase, so a subject, verb, noun, so girl reading book. But also keep in mind there's a lot of other skills that students will also need to build on. So we'll need another program for gender, for instance, so the student is able to identify, girl versus boy, etc.
And at the same time that we're teaching this with pictures, we'll very often also teach it with real life actions, because even though a student can identify a verb or an action in a picture, very often they won't be able to make that same label when they see a person doing that action. So we'll have them be able to identify the verb both in a picture and in an action, and then expand on that both ways so that they're using language in a lot of different ways and in a lot of different environments with multiple stimuli.